Hey folkies, Emelie Waldken here. With this video I would like to start a little new chapter of these Scandi Folk Nerd videos, which is going to be about transmitting folk music. So this first video is going to be about teaching a tune, and the next one, is going to be about learning a tune by ear and how we can make the best out of it. So for this video I'm going to focus on how to teach a tune by ear to other people. So I am going to provide you kind of a basic structure for teaching and also a bunch of tips that are based on my own experience as a teacher and as a student, what I've noticed in teachers that is good and or bad, and so telling you what you should probably do and probably not. I will try to talk as much to people who are good musicians, advanced players, used to teach to other people, and to people who are not very comfortable. I will try to talk to both of you and to provide solutions and interesting things for both of you. So let's get started. So before you start actually teaching your tune, there are a few things that you can consider. So the first thing I'm going to tell you is not really technical about how to teach, but more from me to you in an emotional way, a way to help, because I know that there are some difficulties about teaching. And what I want to tell you there is that during the short moment when you're going to be teaching these other people about the tune you are going to be a teacher. Doesn't matter if it's 10 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour, during that lapse of time you're going to be their teacher and they're going to be your students. And my advice about that is just own it. You have the right to be their teacher. This is very important, I think, to understand, because folk music is based on the people, folk. So it's not about some people have the right to teach and not others. Everyone has. Of course, in reality, there are some masters of the field of expertise, as for every other subject. But it doesn't mean that people who are less experienced or less advanced or anything don't have the right to actually teach as well. Folk music is transmitted by the people, that's its definition, so it makes you a player totally valid as a teacher to other people. If other people want to learn a tune and they don't, that's all you need to actually become this teacher for the time of the tune. So own it, don't be scared of that, you have the right to do that, you deserve it. I would say the only responsibility you have is to provide correct and full information about the tune, but I'll come to that later again, because that's an important point. But your technical skills, your abilities to play in front of others, your abilities to speak or anything, these are not what those people are gonna judge. So if you're nervous about playing in front of them or teaching in front of them, well, they're not gonna judge your playing. They're not gonna judge how well you play or how many variations you put or anything. They're just here for learning the tune. Maybe that can help you be less nervous if you are. My second tip before you actually start teaching is to consider a bit who your students are. So first consider the instruments. If you are a fiddler and you have only fiddler students, that's pretty easy. You know yourself what are the difficult passages and what can be easy for them and this kind of stuff. Of course everyone is different, but in general you know. But if you have many other different instruments, if you have flutes, clarinets, guitars, cellos, nyckelharpas, singers, many other instruments, it is going to be harder usually and more complex for some of them to learn from you. There can be difficulties about range of the instruments. For example, if you're a fiddler and you teach to nyckelharpa players, violas and cellos, playing on the E string for you is easy, but for them it means climbing on their keyboards or up on their fingerboards, and this can be more tricky for them. So just realize that there are some difficulties there. For example, see that they are struggling and take a bit more time. Also, if you have instruments with limited ranges, for example some flutes or singers, maybe consider transposing the tune, or if they can't, they can't. Sometimes you have to teach a tune that's in a key that they just can't play. For example, if you can adapt, that's good. If you can't, well, sometimes not everyone can play everything, sadly. But try as much as you can. Also be aware of some technical limitations of some instruments. Again, if you're a fiddler and you have some accordion players in your group of students, well, they can't play blue notes. So maybe you can tell them where the blue notes are, but you will have to flatten the note, or to let them flatten the notes at least, because they can only play a chromatic scale, for example. Also, if you have transposing instruments, so B-flat clarinets, Harding fillets and so on, be sure to know in which key you're talking when you're talking to them. If you can yourself tell them directly their notes, that's great. It's very helpful for them. If you can't, that's totally fine, but be sure that they know that you're not talking in their key, so they have to transpose. So just make sure about this kind of stuff. And then the second thing you can check about your students is their level. Sometimes you know it because you already know the people, sometimes you don't. And you don't have to know it before you start, but try to be aware of indications of high and or low level. For example, if people are very much struggling with learning by ear, because they're not used to that, maybe they learn from sheet music, for example, well, realize that they will maybe need more time for just figuring out the notes. Maybe you can tell them the notes, that could help. Or if you have very advanced players, maybe you can just move faster and have the things done like quicker, and then you can maybe add more variations and more spicy, complicated stuff in a way. So be a bit aware of how fast they go. It might also happen that you have very different levels in your group, and in this case, consider maybe the time limit that you have, and it's nicer to stick to what the lowest players can, but sometimes you can't because they just don't manage at all or something. But just try to be aware of that, of their difficulties, and to adapt a bit to that. That makes a nicer teacher. Also, still before you start actually playing with them, what you can do is to give them a little structure of the tune. This is not forcefully needed, but if the structure is a bit unusual, for example, you have, I don't know, instead of 2 A's, 2 B's, you have 3 A's, 2 B's, for example. And or if you have harmony changes, like you have 3 parts and A and B parts are in D minor and C part is in A major, that can be good to tell them. It can help them to know where they are in the structure, to have a blank canvas in a way to put their notes afterwards. And it can also be very helpful for instruments such as harps, who need to change their little keys in order to play the right notes at the right moment. So this is not needed, but it can help them that you're just telling them the structure of the tune. Just very simple, 2 sentences or something. Then let's get into the actual teaching of the tune. What I highly suggest is that you just start by playing the tune yourself. And here it can be good to tell your students to the first time not play along with you, but just listen, because all students have a tendency to just like, oh, a new tune, and just want to rush into the tune. But we actually learn better when we have listened carefully to something first. So if you have this kind of authority, just tell them, well, I'm playing once, and just listen for now. And maybe then they will start joining. Very probably they will, because they want to. For this first time through, maybe play 2-3 times through the tune. What I very much advise you to do is first remove all ornaments. So no double stops, no rhythmical variations, no drills, none of this kind of stuff. The simplest melody possible. Ornaments can come later on. For now you just need the notes. And also play very, very clearly. So try to really have notes pure and clear where they start, in the rhythm as well. Rhythm very clear, and also the parts very clear. So when you play your tune all through, make the change between A and B parts and B and C parts, for example, very clear. You can just play clearly and that's it. That would be enough actually. But if you want, you can even like show where the change is. My way of doing that usually is just with my eyes. I'm just like, you know, this is the end of the A part, we're getting into the B part. If you can talk at the same time as you play, that's great, but you don't have to. You don't even have to show, but it can help. You can also, yep, with your voice, or you can lift a foot or whatever. There are many ways of showing that you're at the end of a part or something. So that can be a nice tip. And also try to play slowly. Especially if this is a fast tune, it's very, very good to slow down the tempo. Can be hard for you to play slower than usual, but try your best and play as slow as you can, but since the tune should make sense and sound good. If it's too slow and sloppy, then no one can understand where it's going, but slowing down a bit can really help a lot. And try to stick to that tempo, so take a slower tempo and don't accelerate again. That's easy to do, but for now just stay very calm, very clear, play very clearly, very simple and pure. That's all they need for now, they just need the notes. So it's totally fine if you play lots of times just like this. You are not here to show your skills or abilities to play great stuff, you're just there to give them the notes. At that point, very probably you will have people asking you for something, and you might or might not do it depending on how you feel about that. And this is splitting the tune into little bits, smaller bits. So if you feel comfortable doing that, do it. If you don't, you don't have to. People should be able to learn a tune like this. Maybe you can split the tune into A part, B part, and so on. But you don't forcefully need to split into smaller parts. But if you want to, if you have the skills to do that, and if you feel that it's needed by your students, that's a good thing to do. So you're just gonna basically consider your tune as a chain, and you will teach them a little part, and you will repeat this part several times. And here I suggest two things. The first one is that you choose a part that makes sense in itself. For example, a little scale or a part of the melody that is already a nice melody by itself, not too long, not too short. And you repeat it a couple of times, and you don't loop it directly. That's my second advice. Don't just play the thing again and again and again and again without any break. When you play it several times, add a little silence in between the repetitions. So it doesn't need to be long, can be just 1 beat or 2 beats or 3 beats, doesn't matter really, but have a little silence between the repetitions, so your students are not just learning it as a circle that is turning, as a loop, because that's harder to open than to learn it as a loop with a break, that they know where to open the break, in a way, if you see what I mean. So you just teach them this little bit, and when they're done with that, when they are comfortable and they play it quite right, then you teach them a second one, and when this one is good, you put them together and you play those 2 bits together, and then a third one, and so on and so on. At this point, you will also very probably already have questions from your students. So they might ask you, this high note that was alone up there, was it a C? Was it a D? Can you repeat this rhythm again? I'm not sure I get it. Or there is this little hard part at the end, very fast notes, I'm not sure I get it. So even if you have already broken down into bits, you will probably have to break into smaller bits. And if you haven't broken into bits, well, that's maybe the moment when you can just take one little bit that seems to be problematic for your students and just work on that alone. So try to answer the questions as good as you can. Also remember that you have the absolute right to say, I don't know. Like maybe someone asks you, is that the same rhythm as in this type of polska? And you have strictly no idea. Tell them. There is no shame in saying, I don't know. Also, little advice. It's very probable that they will ask you directly some questions, they will just dare, but if they don't, or even if some of them have already, it can be a very good thing to just ask them, do you have any more questions? Is everything clear? Because the shy people who don't dare to ask by themselves, they might need a little push so that they actually dare to ask what that note was or something like that. When everyone has the full tune and feels kind of comfortable playing it, maybe there are still some mistakes, but it's getting pretty well, that's the moment to do 2 things. It's the moment to speed up the tempo, if you had taken it down in the beginning. So you just play the tune many times and you just speed it up a little bit up until you reach the final tempo. And also, that might be the moment to talk about ornaments. If you have very advanced students, you don't really need to do that, you just add your own ornaments while you play and they will hear them and they will copy or get inspired. But if you have people who are not very used to learn by ear or who are kind of beginners, it can be very, very nice for them if you can give them a couple of interesting things to do on this tune. For example, another version of the tune. Here we play the D, but actually I've heard someone play with an E. Let's try with an E this time. That's nice, it's a little variation. Or maybe, oh, I play drills on all the open strings on this scale down, for example. Or the drones are going like this. First you play this open string and then you can add this other one. I don't know, this kind of little things, it can really spice it up a little bit and make it more interesting for them. And so if you have cool ornaments to tell them, just do, or variations or something. At this point you are at the end of your teaching, and now comes what I call the after teaching, and usually this is about recording. So it might happen already before that people ask you, oh, can I record what you teach? And my advice would be to tell them, well, we'll record later, like we'll have a recording session at the end of the tune learning. Because if they record at the same time as you teach, they might be kind of distracted. Also, that's quite normal when we have the tune somewhere recorded, we are paying less attention on the actual learning of the tune because we think, oh, it's there, it's in my archives, I'm fine, I don't need to really learn it this time. Which is actually a shame because you can learn a lot from a direct teacher. So for recordings, like just audio recordings are very common in folk music. You can be uncomfortable with that, but I would say refusing to be recorded is kind of not nice, except if you actually provide sheet music for the tune, but still, like, you need to have a way for people to remember what you have taught them. But if you are uncomfortable with cameras, you can absolutely say no to videos. Not everyone is comfortable with the video, and it's your absolute right to say, please don't take any videos because I'm not comfortable with that. So if you prefer just audio, fine. Again, for recording the audio, remember that they're not judging your playing, they are nor how you look like if there are videos, they're just trying to learn the tune and have it somewhere in their files. During the recording, I have an idea of a basic structure that you can use, implying 3 main steps. The first one is telling them all the infos you have about the tune, and I'm very much insisting on that one because that's the moment when your responsibility, your only responsibility as a folk music teacher for this period of time, actually comes into the scene. This is what I call gathering informations about tunes and not losing informations. So tell them all you know about this tune, where it's from, what's its name, who you have it from, who wrote it maybe, or all this kind of stuff. If there are stories about it, if it was played on other instruments, all you know about the tune. If you don't know much about the tune, not very good, but you can still do one thing, is to tell them who taught this tune to you. Did you learn it from a CD, from a teacher, from a workshop, something? So if they want more information, they can go to your source and find maybe informations there. But don't give no infos, give as many infos as possible. Then you can play the tune, and the first time you play the tune through, I would say, again, play it very simple, very clear, a bit slower, no ornaments. And the second time you play through, you can go wild and crazy and play the tune full tempo with all the ornaments and variations you want, so that also they can have some interesting ideas for their own playing when they know the tune really solidly. So that's just the basic structure. Of course you can play it more, or you maybe can say the information at the end, but that's what I found to work the best for me and for my students in general. So now your teaching is done, people kind of know the tune and they have it recorded somewhere so they can work on it. There are 2 extra tips I have for you. The first one is, if you feel comfortable singing, you can make them sing before they actually play. Here I'm talking about instrument players, so not singers. Obviously singers are gonna sing, but it can help a lot instrument players if they learn the tune by humming it, singing it before they actually put their fingers on their instruments to play it. That is because voice is closer to the brain than the fingers are. So this is not necessary, but it's a good idea. If you feel comfortable singing with them, do that. It can be a very good idea. You don't have to sing well, they don't have to sing well, it's just humming the tune to see the pattern in their heads in a way. And the second tip is, if you're a bowed instrument player and you're teaching other bowed instrument players, you can have a little technical chapter about bowing technique, especially for Scandinavian tunes that are so very much related to bowing patterns and so on. And here I can tell you about Kjell-Erik Eriksson, this great player from Jämtland, who has this way of teaching that he teaches the melody first, and after a while he just tells his students to put their bows under the violin and to bow in their elbow so there's no sound. They can still play the melody with their left fingers, and he plays the melody and he makes them focus on his bowing patterns so they follow along in a way. So that's a very good idea. You can do that with other instruments and other typical technical things, patterns, I don't know, chords for the guitars or whatever. Those are my tips about how to teach a folk tune to other players. I hope this was useful. If you have any experience in teaching, please let us know what you think is good, what did work or not for you. And also, as a student, tell us the same thing. What did you notice was a good teacher and why? And what was mistakes, what was hard to understand, hard to follow? Do you have any tips, ideas, critics, questions maybe? So feel free to ask them in the comments, or you can also write to me privately via my webpage if you prefer. As usual, if you can support these videos by the usual liking and subscribing, that would be very appreciated. And also, if you could think of supporting me a bit more substantially, you can visit my Patreon page. Patreon is a platform that allows you to support a creative person with very little amount of money every month. And this might be very small, but it's actually very, very much helping creators. So if you could support me there, that would be very, very nice of you. It would help me a lot because those videos are a lot of energy and time. Maybe they don't seem like it, but this video, for example, yesterday it took me many hours to write the structure and rehearse the speech and everything. This morning I got up earlier to set all the stuff, light and camera and everything. And now I'm recording that, and then I will have a couple of hours of editing. So yeah, it's a lot of work. Also, maybe you have noticed, maybe heard as well, I'm quite sick, so it's extra energy. I'm still doing those videos because I think they're worth it. And so if you would like to support me, that would be very nice of you. As usual, thank you very, very much for watching this video. I hope it was useful, and I hope you will have a lot of fun playing. See you next time. Hej då!